Hello everyone, this is the Inside Web3 podcast show with Pigman.
They tried to, bring out certain players in the space and what was required of them. The rules have since then matured, right? The latest amendment was around last year, 27th of September, which was supposed to take effect around 30th of June this year. So as we speak, the proposed amendments to the rules should be in effect. Now, I will now try to bring this into how that plays out. Let's look at it first from the investor side. So as an investor seeking to come into Nigeria to, put money in startups, you know that Nigeria is very fertile ground. Like we're topping the charts, crypto-wise, stable coin-wise. There's a lot. We have the highest kind of population that uses crypto right now. The average youth has a heard of Bitcoin in Nigeria. So we are such a very beautiful market for foreign investors. But the thing is this, and I will speak on this from my perspective of, just mingling with clients and people over the years working as a lawyer. It's a scary space. I would say that because the regulations they're still developing, right? But I would say it's a bit better than before. At least it's better than not having anything at all. You have something, but the something is not all that great, right? Now, why would I say it's not all that great? Before I go into that, I'm moving to how it affects startups. So definitely, as someone that's launching a business, right? The first thing that comes to your mind is, I have to incorporate my business. At startup, I need to set up legal structure in the country that I wish to operate in. So let's say, for example, you want to set up something that has to do with exchange, right? Cryptocurrency exchange. Your first point of call, you go to the CAC, you pick your company structure, most likely private limited liability company. And the next thing that happens is that you need a license to practice, right? You can't just walk into the space. You actually doing the license to practice. Now, going by the rules, and the person who has the opportunity or the power to give you that license right now is the SEC. And the rules require people, VASPs, VAS, Virtual Asset Service Providers, exchanges, custodian, people who host ICOs, which we call offerings in quote, right? It requires you to join the Accelerated Regulatory Incubation Program. Let's just call it like a sandbox. You know how the regulators watch you for a bit. So you apply, if you are accepted, they watch you, look at your product, and then after you're done with the program, you get the opportunity to apply for an actual license. Now, that is the current path to getting a proper license to practice or, to operate fully in the Nigerian market as a virtual asset service provider today. So why is it hard for startups? The first being that the Accelerated Regulatory Incubation Program is not as accelerated as it should be. In fact, it is going at snail pace at this moment. I cannot begin to express my displeasure on the matter. The fact that applications opened around last year, and up until this moment, the SEC can only boast of 2 exchanges who have been given provisional license to actually operate. Now, this is in an economy where you have a lot of startups. Let's not even talk about the number of startups coming out of, let's say, the Solana ecosystem alone. Startups are coming every day, hackathons. From there, you see ideas blossoming into great companies. But these guys do not have the opportunity to actually operate legally. Because from what we've seen, right, and this is just a little bit of like insider insight in the application process, getting into the ARIB, the SEC is mostly focused on the big guys. And if you tie this into the law, if you look at the share capital requirement for exchanges, if you wish to run an exchange right now, a crypto exchange, legally licensed, you shouldn't have anything less than 500 million naira share capital.
Yeah,
It's a lot. Now, does
I-
that sound like
it's a lot. It's a lot. Sorry to cut you, but I looked at some of the fees. I say, wow,
Yes. So you can imagine.
it's
Let's not even talk startup. Let's remove the scratch it. Startup, the space is not for startups. So it's basically saying the Nigerian government is looking at big guys. You know what? $500 million doesn't mean you will provide the money like right out, like, oh, you should, oh, I have 500 million naira in my account. It just means you have to register the company as a 500 million naira share capital company. That comes with a lot of costs. Operational costs, first of all, your registration fees, your tax fees, and you also have to show proof of, assets that if anything happens, at least you should be worth a certain amount of money. I do not think that the guys coming up now actually have that. So it's the bar is extremely high. I would say off the bat, the space, virtual asset space right now is not for startups. It is not friendly at all for young guys. It's for people like Binance and BitGet, blockchain.com, Bybit. They are the guys that the SEC is targeting right now. So for startups, it's a strangling space. The regulatory regime now is strangling, right? And let's now also put it into the fact. Let's go to stablecoins, because stablecoins are really now like it's the in thing. Everyone asks, so what are stablecoins categorized as right now in Nigeria? It's actually a confusing notion. We don't really know, because in the rules that the SEC has put forward, stablecoins are categorized under virtual assets. They are called virtual assets. Now, when you read the ISA was the SEC's move to basically plant itself as a full-time regulator for virtual assets. In fact, the only thing they did in that act was simply include virtual assets into the definition of securities and include exchanges into the entities that the SEC can regulate. So to me, that act was quite lazy. I keep saying it was quite a lazy act. But then, so now when you now tie this to the fact that stablecoins are deemed to be virtual assets, and you interpret that with what the ISA is saying, that virtual assets are under the SEC, there is a confusion. So who is regulating stable coins? Now, within the rules that we have, right, within these actual rules, there is a section for people who wish to issue stable coins inside the SEC rules. That's a question. Why is it inside the SEC rules? Because stable coins are primarily made for payment, not necessarily trading, but it's in the SEC rules. And the SEC actually requires you to get an approval, like a no objection letter. It's kind of like an approval from the CBN if you wish to operate as an issuer right now. So it's like the SEC and the CBN, they're trying to shake hands, but they're not really sure as they want to shake hands, regarding stablecoins. So now where does that leave you as a startup who, let's say you have this beautiful idea of helping people, transfer stablecoins across borders, or you want to help people to trade, using stablecoins as a storage of value. Where does that leave you in the gap? You are confused. You don't really know how to move on from that. And then you go into the fact that the CBN at some point last year, September, was practically hunting those who were having P2P exchanges, basically saying that they opened up the channel for USDT to Naira conversions. I know everybody, or most of you guys must have heard about what happened with Binance last year, the P2P markets, the fact that right now we still cannot access Binance, Bybit and Co. from, your normal MTN, Airtel. You have to use the VPN. The CBN was very conscious about foreign exchange value. and they tied that to the USDT. So they were basically treating USDT as foreign exchange. So it's interesting that something you're treating as foreign exchange is inside the CEF rules. There are lots of questions. So I would say, first of all, for startups, is a confusing space. But what we usually advise guys that come under our firm is, we start to make sure that you are at least compliant on all fronts. Let it be that the SEC is vague, but we will try to make sure that, you stay compliant, make sure that you're reporting, you're registered, and you're speaking to regulators as well. So it's everybody's just trying to manage the waters, but it's really not encouraging. For users, I would say you don't really see these effects until they flow from the startups down to you. So, for example, with the way stable coins are going on now, and Nigeria hasn't going, they haven't started like a crackdown on stable coins like full time yet, in line with what they have in the law. It, right now, you may see a point where you wouldn't be able to use certain stable coins, like they would intensify efforts. So regulatory efforts will flow to users later on, but the startups really feel it the most. I really feel for startups in this space. So you have two options in this time. Is either, first of all, you say, oh, I'm not even going to care about the SEC. They can like to do their business as anyhow they wish. I will continue to run my company. After all, I'm in DeFi. There's no problem. Maybe my work is on chain. I don't need these guys. In fact, I don't even need to have legal structure. But then it's risky, because the only way nobody is going to know about you is if you don't blow. And I don't think you don't want to blow. Your goal is to blow now because you want to
Blue. So definitely when you hit mainstream, they will hit you. So it's how it is. It's how it is that. So sorry. I had to go in, and everything you said, it's really what's happening. This whole thing with regulations. Personally, I say this because I also have my own personal opinion.
Mhm.
What's the I mean the Nigerian regulators are doing is not ideal. And sometimes I look at it as, I don't think these guys have a very good knowledge on what this whole industry is all about. If they had such a knowledge or understanding, they would not be doing things like this. That is one of my own, how I see it, because if you compare it with what frameworks like MiCAR, sorry, not MiCAR. I will come to MiCAR, where Apraemio falls under. I mean, within the European Union, the EU.
Mm.
Even EU also, even EU framework is a bit strict. It's so strict.
Yes.
But I read the EU's framework, and I know these people did a research.
Mm.
They made such regulatory approaches based on research, by even bringing some categories out, and like the ENC, the e-money token category, and you've got the asset reference token category, and the third one, because in the MiCAR, the MiCAR, which stands for market in crypto, market in crypto, in crypto assets regulations, which falls for all EU member states, countries, to which Apraemio also falls under. I mean, the country where it's been established, headed, and the last category happens to be called other crypto assets.
Mm.
They termed it as other. So you're looking at the e-money, from what it was defined as, tokens that are backed to fiat currency, one fiat currency. We were looking at the euro, and even also USDT, USDC. Yes. And when you come down to asset reference tokens, you are looking at tokens within, categorized within the EU, that are back to commodities like gold, or a basket of commodities, or kind of the real world asset tokenization that has an asset tied to it, like gold and other silver and real estate asset reference. And now you're coming down to other assets. The third category was said to be other asset, and a number of asset, other crypto asset. And they did this because they understood how the landscape is, how this industry is in a way evolving, and it's a bit complex, that they had to categorize the last one as CK, other to asset. And this is where tokens, the utility tokens like Bitcoin, Solana, even Bitcoin is part of it, and Solana, and you're looking at a number of mainstream tokens right now. They had to do it that way because they are still looking at the complexity of this whole thing, even if they want to go strict, because MiCAR is one of the strict or one of the, for me, is actually one of the strict regulations also in the world. And that is one of the reasons, my opinion, that a number of innovations are not coming. And there are some people, some experts in the space, who are saying that MiCAR is behind, the EU is behind in this industry because of the regulation. It's just an opinion. This is just an opinion from people who are studying these regulatory approaches. But here we go again with Dubai. Here we go with the UAE. No one ever saw this coming, that the Middle East, it's going to lead an innovation, an industry like this. Currently, the EU has zero tax on crypto, while India is having 30% flat tax on trading crypto. This is how bad it is. In fact, the Indian landscape only has tax routine. They have not formulated any official document on a regulatory framework. So you've seen that although I've heard rumors, there have been rumors that are trying to bring out something, but no one is saying anything. And so you see this whole thing with regulations is really affecting. And when I read the VARA document, I was amazed. It was so explanatory. It was interesting to read, to be honest. The fundamentals they use and how they communicated their message, that they want the UAE, Dubai, to be a hub. And believe me when I say it's already happening. It's working. It's working. Dubai is one of the most easiest place, in the whole world where you can start a Web3 company. It's in the world right now. Dubai leads. It's my opinion. Dubai leads. And I'm not just the one saying it, but even industry experts, those who are deeply immersed, even more than I do, are saying it. The last administration of the United States really wanted to bring down the industry for the country in a way that it affected the entire, the global markets of the cryptocurrencies. We would see what man then that really people saw him like saw him as I don't know how to put it, whether I don't know, but it was drama all day until Trump came into the scene. Even if Trump like to talk about crypto, but he actually changed the narrative. He made an impact. He brought he actually sucked in the landscape for the American crypto landscape, and everyone became so bullish that is why we have generous regulatory acts and clarity, and also the anti-CBDC act that says the Fed will not the country will not issue a CBDC without the House agreeing to it, and no one really likes CBDC. No one likes CBDC except you in China. It's only China. So I'm just saying it, but it's just this whole thing, and it's just this whole thing. So I'm being honest. This regulation is a very powerful thing. If there is a dissension in a state, there can be a progress. There can be progress between the head and the body. The government happens to be the head, and if the impact of regulations we can see in places like Dubai, in places like right now, a turnaround in the American landscape, it means so much that the world is watching. Nigeria happens to lead, but at the same time, it can things can change overnight if it does not begin to really understand.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I'm just trying to say. Sometimes I ask myself, if these guys don't understand this thing, let them. There are a number of young people, brilliant people in the industry. Call them to advise you. It's just that is just the truth about this whole thing. That have an experienced knowledge, that are going deep in the international space. They are not just they know from day one. They're everywhere. But you just see some guys. No, sorry, I mean no, but we just see some people that have no idea. They are just coming up to me. They just no. Some even if it's copy and paste, so it's all about, for me, it's all about understanding.
Yes.
If the government does not understand this technology, the impact it can have, you will go bad with regulations.
Yes.
And I made my comment. I say India needs crypto as much as Asia needs a crypto India, because there are millions of people, not just tens of millions. I mean, I think it's more than 100 million. India population is mad, you understand? So more than 100 million people into the industry. And we have a country giving serious sanctions on the industry for their own personal interest. It's not just happening alone in India, but India happens to be one of the notable country.
Yes.
Notable country. So even in Apraemio, we faced, tight, serious regulatory challenges that even we are trying to comply with the MiCAR. And like I said, that the MiCAR is also strict. But one thing I like with what the MiCAR has done is that they have an understanding. They actually did their homework. Yes. And I believe countries like Nigeria should do our own homework too.
Yes.
Seriously. And come up with something better than just coming to say all cryptocurrencies are securities. No.
So
No, so sorry. So yeah, just continue.
yeah, so the SEC DG, so basically they believe that you have to prove. If you say your crypto is not a security, so you have to prove that your cryptocurrency is not a security. So if you're saying, oh no, this is a governance token, it's a utility token, or it's just for payments, you have to prove first the SEC that it's a security. In fact, they feel it's either a security or it's a commodity. It has to be one of the two. So, but then the thing is, how definite is it that when I prove, you will accept? What's the burden of proof? As a lawyer now, so how high do I have to go to convince you that what I have is actually just a governance token? There's no threshold for this convincing that needs to be done, which is why it's quite vague, right? At the moment, it's quite vague. But just a heads up, I'll just say that at least we can look on the bright side that at least we have something now. There was a time when it was dark. It was also dark once in the US. It was a back and forth. Every minute you're hearing lawsuits, someone is being sued, but it was also a very dark time as well in Nigeria. And it's great that at least we have something. I believe that they will evolve. It's just that the pace at which that evolution is taking place is too slow for the kind market that you are in charge of. You are in charge of a very, very, very ripe market. If you need to act fast, South Africa is licensing every day. I think that they've talked over like 250 crypto asset service providers. They're licensing companies. That's not good news, because you have business leaving your country. People will start thinking of incorporating elsewhere, and once that happens, there's a problem. There's a problem. So basically, you can't even have an account right now as a VSP without the license. If you have a virtual asset, anything that has to do like virtual asset, so well pronounced on your company incorporation document, you will actually need to. The bank will refer you back to the tech. So it's either you hide yourselves or you just get stalled in business. You don't know when to start work. So there's a lot of things they need to consider. They need to increase the pace of their evolution. It's too slow and it's not helping. People are innovating in limbo and in the dark, and that's not great because trust me, this space loves behind stuff. You've already said how you were scammed. If how you experience Bitcoin, scams are everywhere, and they thrive when there's no regulation. So it's just that, yeah, yeah.
So it's an evolving landscape, and it's no it's not a new thing. I think even I guess I believe that the US was even more worse than I think with the last administration. It's all about having good I would say having good leaders and having leaders that understand that. We could see that even places like El Salvador, that they are now the talk of the day when it comes to Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, the industry. It's just how it is when you have people who really are out there understanding the entire space. So moving on, I would just want to get your opinion on what you think makes crypto regulatory framework and truly progressive. I know we said a lot um, on regulation so far. So let's just tell it down with this question and try to end and round it up with this particular question on what really makes regulatory framework truly progressive. Is it clarity, flexibility, and innovation friendly, or something else? And of course, what advice will you give to governments out there, regardless of the country? I'm just saying, but a truly progressive framework for me VARA is number one. I just for me because I know I've read it. For me, VARA is number one in Dubai, and the impact is already showing. It's already showing there in the country. I mean, events, you can't even count the number of events that goes on. Not just events, but foreign events coming. Not regional event. I'm talking about a country's own event. No, I mean foreign events. That is how you know that a country has really done their homework and they are really making frameworks truly progressive, not to sabotage the innovation, but to make sure they stand as the first movers or the leading country. That was what was stated on that framework, and I read it so much. I read it so much with with a number of yeah. So what's your take on it? What's your opinion on it? Yeah.
All right. So yes, I actually did go through VARA, and I'll just say before they are really as much as they're progressive, they are very very intentional, extremely intentional. Yeah, they have like rule books for like every single type of virtual asset provider. It's very 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 great to see. So for me, I would say that all three are actually necessary, both clarity, flexibility, and innovation friendliness. But first of all, you have to be innovation friendly. That one would take the top of the list because the space is one that it evolves so quickly. And everybody knows here, if you're a Web3 person, you can't really be all over the place in the topics. It's like just so you stay sane, so that you can stay sane. You have to pick something and just focus on it because the space evolves. There's so much going on. There's so much in the news. The discovery is still happening. I remember you said we've passed through the phase one, but I still firmly believe we're still very early in the space because a lot of things are just getting ripe. The technologies are still being used in ways that we don't even know yet, right? New innovation is going to come. So if you are not innovation friendly, you will not be able to have a stable regulatory framework in this kind of space. You must be very ready to embrace innovation, and not just always good innovation. Bad innovation also signifies a space for you to regulate. So, but most of the time, they always focus on just the bad. Oh, there's a scam here. Oh, let's quickly block this area, right? So, focus on both on good and bad innovation. Look at both and see how you can make progress from there. And another thing is try to see okay, I'll put that as an advice. After innovation friendliness is now flexibility. So you cannot be innovation friendly if you are not flexible, right? Because it moves here and there. You need to be ready to always interface with the community, the stakeholders, say, "Oh, what's going on?" Have people that give you feedback on what exactly is happening in the space. I know that the Genius Act and the Clarity Act, it's a good one. I love the provisions there, even though there has been some criticism, from people in the space on how there are still some gaps here and there in the laws. But one thing I would appreciate, especially from the Clarity Act, which really focuses more on what we use, because the Genius Act is stable coins. Just think of it like that. The Clarity Act focuses more on the normal crypto that you actually use. They're now classified into digital commodities, right? So if when I look at what they have there, a lot of people were not really happy that they excluded NFTs, DeFi, but at least they set up a framework for research. It means that they are still very interested in being flexible, in opening up to that, even though people said, oh, it still creates room for a lot of regulatory what will I call it, arbitrary nature. But then the thing is this: they are still making room for flexibility to research and be ready to go back to the drawing board. So you cannot be innovation friendly and not flexible. Then the last is clarity. I think that is another extreme. In fact, if you're innovation friendly, you're flexible, but your rules are not clear, there will be a problem. It doesn't matter how embracing you are in the space, you will not be able to communicate. I will also touch more on definition in the space where we are right now. Definition as a lawmaker, the definition section is your sword, right? It is the place where you determine the parameters of your regulation. If they are not clear, it will be very hard for people in the space to apply the law that you have drafted. And that is a problem that I have found in the present rules we have for digital assets in Nigeria. The definitions are quite vague and need work. So it shows up when you're trying to actually interpret the act. Because when you look at the definitions, you're like, oh, okay, this is what they said this means. Okay, how does that apply in the actual world? So you need clarity in the definitions, most especially because they flow into your act and then in your provisions. So those three. Then generally, as an advice, what I've said actually really counts as advice, but most especially, I would say government should always look out for the edge cases. When you're building products, you always say, oh, these are my users, right? I have this particular market, but there are always this group of people that they're not really, they don't show up in your research, your market research yet, but they are actually people that if it's not provide for them, there will be a problem. So your edge cases, which is where also research comes in, always make room for edge cases, especially in this kind of space. You do not want to be blindsided. Always make room for edge cases, people or situations that come up that you wouldn't have naturally foreseen, but they will affect the structure of what you have right now. So that's it. If I were to just squeeze it all, there's a lot that can be said, but that's what I have to say.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for that wonderful insight. And exactly.